Hi, you're listening to Avril Sauter talking about CCNA Wireless. In this lesson, we get to look at Cisco's wireless control system. This system is for managing, configuring, operating, monitoring, all of those things, the Cisco Unified Wireless Network. And the cool thing about the wireless control system, in my opinion, is that you actually get to be able to configure and monitor your wireless controllers. And so rather than going into each wireless controller, you can centrally configure them and then push that configuration down to the controllers, and then of course those will push the configuration down to your lightweight access points. The wireless control system also manages autonomous mode access points, so that's really important. So we're going to take a look at the configuration and operations of the wireless control system. So let's start with talking about some of the installation requirements so that you can make sure you get your wireless control system up and operational as quickly as possible. So the first thing to note is the operating systems that WCS runs on. It runs on two platforms, the first one of which is the Microsoft Windows Server platform, and it runs on Server 2003 using Service Pack 1 or a later Service Pack. Is not currently supported on Windows Server 2008 or 2012. It also runs on a Linux Red Hat Enterprise Edition, and there you're looking at release 4.2 or release 5 or later. Now you can also run the wireless control system in a virtualized environment sitting over the VM virtualization platform. And there you'd use the VMware ESX Server 3.0.1 or later. The minimum hardware requirements if you're going to run on a virtualized environment is the Intel Xeon Quad CPU with a processor of 3.15 gigahertz. You want at least 8 gig of memory and 200 gig of hard drive. Now Cisco categorize the deployments on a high-end server, a standard server, and a low-end server. And you can see the processor type, processor speed, and the hardware differs depending on whether it's a high-end server, standard or low-end, but coupled with the higher-end processor, higher-end performance, then you can support more access points and more wireless LAN controllers. So at the high end, you're looking at a quad-core processor. You're looking at 8 gig of memory, and 200 gig of hard drive, but you can support up to 3,000 lightweight access points, 1,250 autonomous access points, 750 wireless LAN controllers. And then you've got at the low end, you can run it on a single processor, 3.06 gigahertz, or you can run it on a dual core 1.86 gigahertz processors. And then of course you need less memory and hard drive, but you're supporting just up to 500 lightweight access points, up to 200 autonomous access points, and up to 150 wireless control systems. So when you're planning out your wireless network, you want to make sure that you have a server platform that's big enough to support your desired wireless network. Now in my lab, I'm just running it on a Server 2003 on an Intel based laptop. So it's pretty small, but I've only got a few access points up and running. So you just want to configure it based on your network demands, and don't forget to consider the growth of access points as you're going forward. So let's take a look at some of the key features in the wireless control system. Now, when you've installed your wireless control system on your Windows or Linux server, or maybe you're running it on a VM virtualization environment, you'll be able to access it through a web browser. And you'll simply just type in the IP address of your web browser, and then the wireless control system logon will come up. Now the default username is root, And typically you'll go in through HTTPS, which is a secure interface, and the HTTP is disabled by default. So if you need to change that, you'll need to go in and change the configuration settings, but I'd recommend you leave it on HTTPS. So once you've logged on to the wireless control system, you'll come to the home page, which is displayed here over on the right, and there's a variety of menus, and it's very important to be familiar with these menus and just look to see where the features and the capabilities are. And you'll see that there are 8 main tabs at the top: Home, Monitor, Reports, Configure, Services, Administration, Tools, and Help. So the best way to understand the wireless control system is to take a look at it. So why don't we connect now and just go through those major tabs. So in this demo, I want to show you the wireless control system, and we're just going to take a look at the GUI and some of the major tabs. And so to start this demo, I brought up my Internet Explorer browser and I typed in the IP address of my server where the wireless control system is running, i.e. 192.168.60.4, and that's a HTTPS connection. And it brought up this screen which now I can log on. So my username is still the default of root, and then my password, and press login. And this brought me to the home screen. And you can see here under the home screen I have several tabs here. The general tab is showing me the inventory of what I've currently got connected. I have 1 controller and I have 4 radios, and you can see some alarms are going off on those radios. So 2 access points, 2 radios in the 2.4 and 2 in the 5 gigahertz band, and I have no MSEs connected. And over here you can see that a client associated some time ago. You can see when it connected and the fact that it is successfully associated. This allows me to look at more statistical information about the client, what security has been applied if I'm using a mesh, the clean air technology, or the context aware. So again, this is the Monitor tab. And on the Monitor tab, as I said, it gives me the status of the wireless devices. Now the Report tab is the one that allows me to set up reports and templates and to run those reports on a regular basis. Then I have the Configure tab, and the Configuration tab allows me to configure my controllers, my access points, my other network components that are under the control of the wireless control system. If I want to convert autonomous mode access points to lightweight mode access points, I would also do that here. Notice here is my wireless intrusion prevention system profiles. Here's my secure access control servers, and here's my TFTP servers if I want to manage those. Under services here you can see I have things to do with location, like mobility services, context-aware notification, etc. Then under my administrative tab, this is where I do my administration of the wireless control system itself. A couple of things to notice here is my high availability, here's my user preferences, and my licensing center. Here I have tools, and wireless tools here would include if I want to see whether my wireless environment is suitable to support voice. I can do a location accuracy tool to help make sure that if I'm using location tagging, that I'm tagging accurately. Notice also here I have the tag case attachment should I wish to put a technical service request into Cisco. And then of course I have my help should I want to have more information about how to use the wireless control system. So that concludes this demo. I just wanted to give you a quick visibility into the tabs. and how to navigate around the wireless control system. So now that you've got a feeling for the wireless control system and where the tabs are, where the functionality is, let's talk a little bit more about the monitoring system. So in the monitoring tab, there is a controller summary screen, and it looks very similar to the wireless LAN controller like you're seeing here. And so I can manage the controllers that I have on my network. I can also look at the wireless LANs, at the SSID and the number of clients, etc. The security tab allows me to look to see if an external radius server is being used, if the 802.11 feature, the management frames protection, has been turned on. Gives me mobility statistics about clients that are roaming between access points and controllers. Gives me different radio statistics both in the 2.4 and the 5 GHz band. Now, to help with the manageability and the monitoring of my wireless LAN network, I can actually add maps to the wireless control system database, and as you can see in this picture here, I've put in my maps, I've added my access points. I can even put the power level of those access points and the type of antennas that I've got on them, and it can actually predict where I've got coverage. So it really helps me understand exactly where these access points, what equipment I have, and exactly what's happening in my network. I can also map over this my location, tagging, rogue access points, etc. So again, providing maps gives the administrator a perspective of what the actual deployment looks like. And of course, these maps are only as good as the pictures that you put in and the data that you put in. And I really recommend that it's worth spending the time making sure that you accurately position your access points on these maps and make sure that they really do support as close as possible to reality, because it will really help your administrators, and then you need to maintain that going forward. And the wireless control system, like any network management system, produces events and alarms, and you can see these alarms through the monitoring screen, or you can produce them in reports. Alarms are actually color-coded, and so you have red for critical alarms, orange for major alarms, and yellow for minor alarms. And here in the picture here, I'm showing you the wireless control system alarm summary, and you can see the different types of alarms across the top. And just to give you a feeling for some of these, if you look at the picture there, under alarm summary it says access points, and that would show alarms such as an access point is disassociated from a controller, or a threshold, a load threshold has been exceeded, or maybe rogue access points have been detected. Controller alarms might be things like reachability, if some licensing had expired, or there's been a failure on the controller. Coverage holes would be things where clients just don't have enough coverage based on their threshold, so the signal strength is below the threshold value, so signaling that you might have a coverage hole. Mesh links, if you're running a mesh and you have some failure, excessive association, poor signal to noise ratio, those would fall under the mesh alarms. Mobility alarms, those would display problems of reachability. And then you see the rogue access point, the malicious access points, unclassified access points being flagged. Security alarms would include things like signature attacks, client security events like the failure to log on. And lastly, the wireless control system alarms, that would be things like if I was sending a report via email and it failed, that would be flagged there. Or maybe I have a licensing violation. So you can see the wireless control system just is very good at controlling and monitoring all of the nodes in your wireless control system. So now we've talked about monitoring using the wireless control system. But the wireless control system can also be used to configure your wireless LAN controllers and your autonomous mode access point. And to give you an example, if you wanted to configure a controller from the wireless LAN controller, you can literally go in here as the screen shows you, and you can set up the same parameters that you had been setting up directly on your wireless LAN controller. For example, the global settings, such as shown here in the picture. You can set up your interface settings, like your management interface setting, or your AP manager, or your virtual interface. You can set up the different lightweight access points and how do you want those lightweight access points to be configured. And of course, that configuration is stored on the controller and pushed down to the access points. You can define the wireless LANs. So you want an employee wireless LAN, or one for guests, or one for accounting or engineering, etc. You can define the security. Do you want layer 2 security? Do you want layer 3 security? Do you want to use WEP, WPA2, or no security? So you can define that. You can even define the physical ports on the wireless LAN controller. So you can define, how you're using those different ports and how to configure them and whether you're going to aggregate them together. So not only can you configure it, of course you can view all of those configuration functions as well. And again, here I'm showing the controller as an example. You can also configure and manage autonomous access points and the mobility service engines as well. Now, in order to manage and push down configurations to controllers and autonomous access points, the wireless control system needs to be configured to be able to communicate between the wireless control system and the controllers, between the wireless control system and the autonomous access point, between the wireless control system and the mobility service engine. And we're going to do that communication using SNMP. And again, let me give you an example. Let's say you wanted to add a new controller to the wireless control system. What you would do is you would go into the wireless control system and you would select the third tab that's shown in this picture called Configure. So you'd select the Configure tab, and then over on the right where it says Select a Command, you can select from that drop-down menu Add Controllers, and you press Go, and then it will ask you information about the controller, and you would at this point in time key in the IP address of the management interface on that controller. It also asks you at that point in time the SNMP parameters. And this is very important to get right, because you'll need those in order for these two boxes to talk to each other and to send SNMP alarms, etc., from the controller to the wireless control system. And once you've done that, the wireless control system will begin communications with the wireless LAN controller, and it'll then bring it up and display it just like you can see in this picture here. And one of the things you want to verify is if you look right on the right side of this picture, you'll see the word in green, reachable. So you want to make sure that this is reachable, and at this point in time the wireless control system is now managing that controller, and you can start driving down your configuration changes, etc., from your central wireless control system. Now, in this demonstration, I'm going to give you another example of how you set up and configure the wireless control system to manage wireless nodes. But in this time, I'm actually going to set it up such that the wireless control system is managing an autonomous mode access point. And so I need to enable SNMP on the access point, and then I need to give all the information about the access point to the wireless control system, and then they'll begin to communicate, and then I can start managing and monitoring and configuring that autonomous access point from the wireless control system. So in this demonstration, I want to show you how to bring up an autonomous mode access point. So again, I've logged on to my Windows Server 2003 where I'm running the wireless control system, and I've logged on with my IP address 192.168.60.4, and it's brought up my login screen. I put my username and password in. And it's brought me to my home screen. This time I'm going to select Configure and select Access Points. And what I want to do is I want to come over here and say Add Autonomous Access Points and select Go. Now this is where I enter information about the access point that I want to bring up, and I can enter an individual access point, or I can enter information using a file, an Excel spreadsheet file. In this case we're going to do an individual device, and you'll notice here I need to set the SNMP parameters, and then I'll enter the parameters about how to log on to the access point. Now before I key in the information, I want to take a look at my access point and make sure it's set up to support SNMP. So over here I brought up my browser and I have connected to my access point through the access point GUI, which is on 192.168.60.60. So I just keyed in the IP address and it brought me to my GUI interface and to my home site. And I want to check SNMP, and that's under Services. And down here SNMP, and you can see that it has been enabled, and you need to make sure it's enabled if you want to talk to a wireless control system. It's got a system name. I'm just going to leave that like it is, and I could optionally here put some location and contact information in. And then down here you can see is set up community strings, and here is one for public is set to read write. And I have one set up for private, also set up for read write. I have my SNMP traps set, and notice here I've set to trap them all, so all of the events are going to be trapped. And here I actually put in the trap destination, and that is the IP address of my wireless control system. Now I don't need to do this, but in this example I just wanted to capture the traps. So the main thing here is that I've set up SNMP in my access point, and I've set up the appropriate community string. So now let's go back to my wireless control system, and now I'm going to type in the IP address of the access point 192.168.60.60. I'm going to leave a version 2 as SNMP. I've got the community set here up as private, and I'm just going to rekey in the passwords just in case these are not the defaults that I have my access point set up with, and then I'm going to type OK. So you can see now that the access points have come up, and you can see here that autonomous, and again I've got two radios, the same access point, and here are my other two access points which are lightweight access points, and so hence they're called CatWap here. Now these are currently down, which means the radio has not been enabled yet, whereas my lightweight access points are actually up. So what you've seen in this demo is that I've gone into Configure, selected access points, and then selected my Add Autonomous Mode access points, and those access points are now available for me to configure from my wireless control system. So now we've talked about how to manage and to monitor the wireless LAN. Let's talk about how we would go about configuring things like wireless LAN controllers and access points. Now the big advantage of managing your configurations from a wireless control system is that you can do it centrally, and you can update multiple wireless LAN controllers. So if your wireless LAN controllers are distributed across the campus, or maybe you have a lot of them, then doing it in the wireless control system can simplify things significantly, especially when it comes to things like the RF group that you're going to use for the radio resource management, or the mobility group that's used for roaming. So you can configure everything on the wireless LAN controller from the wireless control system. You can configure the interfaces, which is what we have pictured here in the diagram. You can configure the wireless LANs. You can configure DHCP, the security settings, both the Layer 2 and the Layer 3 security settings. You can change the SNMP settings, and indeed the global wireless LAN controller settings. So there's really nothing that you can't do from this central location. Also, the way that you manage and monitor the wireless LAN control system is the same as if you were connecting on to the wireless LAN control system. So you're not having to learn two different interfaces, two different approaches for managing the same box. If you're familiar with managing the wireless LAN controller, then you'll be able to do it in the wireless control system and vice versa. And you can also create not only alarms, you can also create reports. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. And just like you can manage the controller, you can also manage the access points exactly as if you are either managing them through the wireless LAN controller because they're lightweight access points, or managing them directly at the access point because they're autonomous mode access points. So you can manage them and the settings identically as if you didn't have the wireless control system. And so you can get in and you can define the interfaces. Here I'm showing the interfaces for an access point, which is a lightweight access point, which is under the control of a wireless LAN controller. You can get in there and change the interfaces, the wireless LAN, again the DHCP settings, security, SNMP, the global wireless LAN control settings. Again, everything that you can do on the wireless LAN controller or on the access point, you can do from the wireless control system. So I want to talk a little bit about managing templates. And templates are an incredibly valuable tool that you have in the wireless control system for helping you configure a large number of controllers and access points. And templates, you can actually have them in the wireless LAN controller and actually upload them to the wireless control system to then modify them from there. And to get to the templates, you would select Configure from your main menu and then Controller Template Launchpad. And then from there you can get into your new controller template like I'm showing in the picture here, or you might want to get into a lightweight access control template, or you might want to get into an autonomous access point template, or even things like access control templates. So very, very valuable, and you'll be able to drive down and do rapid configuration of controllers and access points going forward. I had mentioned the fact that you can bring in floor plans and maps into the wireless control system database, and that is really helpful for kind of monitoring and tracking and helping you configure where your access points are. But in addition to floor maps, you can also bring in the Google Earth maps, and this is quite useful when you're looking at campus-wide deployments. And so you'd probably want to import a more detailed plan than I'm showing here. So you can actually see the campus. You'd want to go down a little bit more. But again, it's very useful, and it can be really good at actually putting the longitude and latitude for your equipment that's actually deployed outside of your building. So maybe you've got an area across your campus that you've deployed access points, and you can literally go in and work out where they're physically located, etc. So then the last thing I want to tell you about the wireless control system is the ability to generate reports. And you can create reports that are current, what's going on at the moment. You can have historical reports, so you can look at what's happened in the last hour, the last 6 hours, the last so many days, etc. And you can also do trend reports. The reporting has bar charts and pie charts, etc. And you can actually look at trends and things that are changing over a period of time, and that might indicate that maybe you need to add more resources or to fine-tune the system in some way. So when I think of a network management system, I think, okay, you've got the operational side where you're driving down configurations. You've got the monitoring side when you're looking at alarms and events that are happening on the system. And the other critical pillar of any management system is the ability to generate reports. And so to finish up this lesson, I want to take a closer look at the wireless control system and show you the kinds of reports that can be generated. And in fact, we're going to go ahead and generate a report so you can kind of get to see how it's generated and the kind of information you can put in a report, how you can customize those reports, and also how those reports not only show data but show pie charts, etc. Now in this demonstration we're going to take a look at the reports that I can run on the wireless control system. And so I have again logged into my wireless control system on my server using 192.168.60.4, and I've come to my home page, and now what I want to do is I want to select reports and launch the report launchpad. Launch the launchpad. And you can see now that I've got a variety of reports that I can run. I've got my clean air reports. I've got client-based reports where I can look at the client traffic, throughput, etc. I've got some compliance reports. I've got context-aware reports, so I can look at location, rogue access points, rogue clients, tagging information. I've got devices. Here's my access point, uptime utilization. If I'm running a guest network, I can look at guest accounts, user sessions. If I'm running a mesh network, I can look at some of the links and how the nodes and hops are performing. I have network summary reports. I have some performance reports, so I can look at coverage holes, utilization, how my voice calls are going. And then I have security reports. So I have my wireless intrusion prevention, looking at my rogue counts, my new access point rogues, security alarms. So let's take a look at this. Let's go into devices and select inventory. Now I haven't run this report before, so there's not a saved report here. So I'm going to select new. And here I can give it a report title. So I can say Avril inventory. I can indicate the report type. If I just want to look at access points or controllers or the mobility appliance, I can do that. Here I'm going to say I want to look at everything. Now customization is not always available on all the reports, but on this report it is. So I can say customization, and this basically would look at subfields, and on some reports you see a long list of fields here, and then you can literally add or remove them. So if I didn't want to see some of this information, I can remove it. Similarly, I can add. See, so here you can see I can add some more information here, and to add my autonomous mode inventory as well. So again, let's say I wanted to add the serial number, actually the AP type. and add that. So I can just add fields for depending on what I want to include in my inventory. Great. Once I'm happy with that, I can select Apply. I can schedule this to run periodically if I want to. I can select the format. I can have it in a CSV format or a PDF format, CSV being Excel. This tells me where this report is going to be saved. I can even email it to myself. Here I can set the start date. Of course, we're going to run it straight away because we're doing a demo here. And I can say how often I want it to reoccur. You can see here I've got options to save and run now, run and export. I'm just going to run now and take a look at this report. So now you can see my inventory report here is showing you my controllers by model. I just have my 2106 controller here. Come down a little bit, is showing you now my software version that I'm running, and so I'm running 7.0116. Come down a little bit, is showing you the IP address of my controller, and it's also giving you my interfaces. Now it's starting to look at my access points, and is saying I've got 3 access points, 2 of them are clean air capable. And coming down a little bit is now giving you the model. This is my 3500 with an internal antenna. You can also see I've got 1 access point which is a 3500 with external antennas, and then I have my 1142, these 2 being the clean air capable access points. Coming down, it tells you the software versions that I've got installed. So you can see here that went down a bit too far. Here I've got the JY version on 1 access point, and here these are my access points which are lightweight, so they're under the control of the wireless LAN controller. Now you can see my AP inventory. This is giving my lightweight access points, and down here you can see my autonomous mode access points. I'm not running an MSE, so this is now left blank. So that is my report. So you can see it lists and gives some graphs. And again, I can add more content, remove fields just by that selection. It's given me the option here if I want to email it or print it or save it. Now, I just want to save this report. So now I've saved Aval's inventory report. I've not got it scheduled, but is there again should I select on it. So if I go busiest APs and then come back and do inventory again, my report is here, and if I want to get back and make some changes to it or enable the schedule, I can do that. So that completes the demo. Thank you for listening.